Greetings to all watchmen out there, wherever you are around the world. We're praying for you in your places of safety. Yes, I believe we're entering in more and more into that time of Jacob's trouble, where we're going to have to look for that Zion, where God is coming back to a people who can keep all of his nationalist laws in peace. Somewhere in the world where they actually respect and preserve state laws, okay? Well, not only in name only, like in the Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, that every state has its own state republic government with their own representation who passes their own laws, okay? But actually protects it where each state goes to bat for each state to have their own laws, which was the true union, okay? But actually, to not have these slowdown points, which could be hijacked by foreign interests, foreign families owning, for example, in allegiance with those private families who own the Federal Reserve System, which do have private shareholders in foreign countries, who have historically been monopolizing and profiteering off of the local American citizens in violation of our laws, where they do take Supreme Court decisions, well, not even decisions, they give opinions, which has just one word in there, and they take that one word to pass a new executive order, a tyrant who's in allegiance with the foreign power, whose families often have shareholders in foreign companies, so that they can drive up prices so that their stock goes up in the foreign offshore. It's for a long time, Marxists have been doing this. Napoleon even was, and his allegiance of his families were doing this. And you know what? They're doing it today too. I mean, Karl Marx, that's what they were doing. He wasn't looking for, what his philosophies are. He was looking at selling. He was a sellout to the local people there. He had no interest in promoting the local people, 99% Christian, as himself a foreign Jew. He didn't wish to let the local people be strong, their own very thriving, prosperous Christian local governments. And what happened? They've adopted his philosophies and brought communism, starting all those overthrows of those European local governments, okay? So you talk about local sovereignty being protected and the rule of law being protected. Well, Marxism is about mob rule and stealing, theft, and killing, okay? Look how far communism has gone. They took away Ukrainians. They might want to grow their own grain, but guess what? Communism says you can't eat your own grain. You can't sell your own grain. You have to ship it to other countries, okay? And let them figure out how to distribute that grain. what happened? Holodomor. They had the biggest Holocaust. Poland, they love to build furniture and do things like this. You know, they like to farm also. Guess what? Communists said, you Polish can't buy or sell your own furniture. That's communism. They took the furniture to Russia. They took the furniture all around the world. And you had to have coupons just to get 100 grams of ham and they tell you how much gets rationed out. And guess what? They had plenty of huge farms all over Poland. They could have allowed Polish people to eat what they wanted, but they didn't. Okay? They had this kind of thing. That's communism, telling people they can't sell or buy things. You know, that doesn't help anyone. Okay? That's theft. All right? So God in His law says you have the right to property now. Okay? That goes against when they want to steal, kill, and destroy from their foreign companies to tell you how they're going to profit off of you, okay, in the Marxism model, all right? You have that operating today when you have a foreign state telling another state, even if they want to say it's Washington, D.C., which isn't a state, to have a tyrant go in there and say, all right, I got this Supreme Court where last year, this year, whatever, they said something with one word in there which can be hijacked and perverted, and they can make a federal mandate, okay, which just didn't come through the Congress itself. No lawmaker was involved, just an executive order, which always can be challenged. So the Supreme Court is sitting there. They're not all just going to go and retire en masse. They're going to hold out because, hey, they hope that someone will challenge it. For example, Roe versus Wade, you know, it's still in every state and federal law says that it's a double homicide. It's a double murder if you somehow hit a woman and you kill her, or if you just kill the baby, it's a murder too. If you hit her in the stomach, it's murder. Okay? So they would expect, you know, some of these cases go up to them. Well, fortunately, a lot of the states did convict people for double homicides and homicides when it was just a baby who died before it was born. So, for example, there's all this room. But you know what they did is they took these points to say, oh, it applies to anything and everything surrounding it. This is tyranny. This is communism to the max, mob rule, violating the rule of law, violating sovereignty of nations. Now, what God wants is us to have what He tells His servants, occupy till I come. We have a whole study on that. I'll put that link down in the description. Occupy till I come. All right. This is what God said for His lawmen, okay, His servants, which it says some of the people aren't going to want to obey my servants, and they're not going to want them to rule over them, which He has placed lords over cities, it says, over cities, all right? And they're not going to want to go along with anything. Well, guess what? He's going to say, take them and slay them before me. He's not going to deal with them when He comes back, okay? I'm saying already before He comes back, because the day of reckoning will come then. For now, it says, come out of Babylon and be ye separate. That's what He tells us to do, His people. Well, I think some states are able to hold out a little while longer, not only in America, but perhaps in some other countries around the world, where freedom of Christian law will continue at least long enough for our people to survive and make it to the Jerusalem, restored Jerusalem, because it says He's going to come back, and you can also look in the description, I'll put the article there, about the merging of His Zion, which is the British Israel and descendant nations of God who have been the source of prosperity, the source of the Abrahamic covenant, the true blessing of all nations, that people can see the peak of it as we have had Christian law. We've seen even science expand and all sorts of things in the areas where the Christian people, the true British Israel people, have prospered. You have seen everything else prosper. All the blessings. There's so much blessings that all the nations of the world want to flood our borders and come to the British Israel people nations. Okay, you can ask any of them. They wish they could come, and they're trying their best. But that's also, it says God's going to allow it to happen. It's like a tidal wave to punish our people. Okay, that they will trample us under, and that's also happening. This has happened, and it's happening now. All in fulfillment of his wonderful covenants with Israel, his true Israel people. He says he will punish us with all sorts of such things. And, you know, his people just need to come out and be separate, all right, and gather together and covenant together with those who are of like faith, okay, from the same backgrounds, kindreds, and peoples. It says he's going to preserve these separate kindreds and peoples all around the world till he comes back. And then these different kindreds are going to come together in the New Jerusalem when he comes back. And he's also going to look for his government in the earth and the faith, continuing faith in the earth, where they have chosen to occupy till he comes back. Okay? So, if just somewhere we're going to have state laws be respected again, we're going to see, as it says, so many wonderful things happen. Okay. You know, they sent, for example, in the integration of the schools, they sent the National Guard from just a small opinion. Okay. They went down and bayoneted parents. They went and killed parents over just a little opinion for the Supreme Court. The US President and his cabinet sends down the National Guard in different states. You had Alabama, you had Arkansas. I think it was Little Rock, Arkansas, where they literally killed and bayoneted parents for their just keeping their freedom of association, normal, rights of the protest or grievance, and so on and so forth, which is totally protected under the Constitution, supposedly, right? And their own laws, right? And you wouldn't expect it to be so misinterpreted, just a few words that are in their decision now to be said, you can go send the National Guard to kill parents? No. These kind of things which were never intended by the Supreme Court. They expected that some cases would come to them to maybe undo, because look, their decisions are normally very specific about some point, and you can't just take it to mean a blank check for almost any kind of inconceivable mob rule tactic to force down on the people the violation of 100 other constitutional laws, for example. That was never the case. So they would expect there to be some mitigations going on. The system is going so slow, but that's what happens when you start putting in these mandates of anti-Christian, total going against the foundations, okay? Yes, those are Christian foundations. The U.S. Constitution today refers back to the union that's being perfected, right? Well, what is that union being perfected? If you check any of the source documents, it says that the Union itself goes back to the Articles of Confederation, and that's the word perpetual. Okay, so that right after the British Independence War, it says perpetual, which meant perpetual means pre-existing. It's a very legal term, pre-existing union. Okay, that meant all the states had an ongoing union before the British, because if you check all the way back to 1637, there was no mention of the British. Okay, but it mentions our Articles of Confederation are based on, it says we all have one aim, the advancement of the kingdom of Jesus Christ and maintaining the purity of the gospel. Okay, so these are the basis of our union and perpetual confederation. All states, every single state adopted, and for 400 years have had this term, perpetual confederation. That's was adopted as the union, and the pre-existing union that's referred to in every single legal document. Okay, it wasn't just something taken out of the air. Even in today's Constitution says for perfecting the union. Okay, so in any case, it's wonderful to see that there are perfecting points ongoing all the time. We could hope the best. I like to think that states would again start protecting other states' sovereignties to have their own laws inviolate, but I don't think it will happen. I think, I like to say, well, some local laws might be protected for a little bit longer, and so thank God that He does protect his people and has given us solutions out there. All right, so, but, if somehow they would restore sovereign state republics back into freedom to have self-representation and follow their own Christian laws, yeah, because 99% of the population was Christian, so especially, the Constitution would be allowing. Article 4, Section 4, it says that the federal government guarantees each state their own republic government, their own republics. Every state is a republic. If you join any of the states, any of the ones that joined, either they already were republics by definition in their own constitution, or afterwards they drafted their own constitution that says we are a republic. For example, the Republic of California. That's one example. But if it joins, it says there in Article 4, Section 4, that they have a republic. They are protected as their own state as being a republic. Okay? A government of its own. A state means a government. Take, for example, the state of Israel. The state of any state of the world, okay, is a full-blown nation with all the rights of sovereignty. All right? Same thing if you joined, or if any state has become a U.S. state, USA state. All right, but a U.S. state is different from a USA state. A USA state is referring to all of them combined, but a U.S. state is referring to one of them. So there, you can always look in the way that stuff's written. And you have a U.S. state attorney general, okay, and you have a USA attorney general, for example, and the U.S. state attorney. This U.S. attorney general means the state's attorney general of, for example, Texas or any of those states, right? And they have, it says the power is in the people represented by states, not by a central system, okay? And each state is in a union to defend all the other states' sovereignty. That is the way that this doesn't become all corrupt by monopolies of foreign-owned states with shareholders of people in government or their families in government who own a foreign, monopoly and take over and exporting of everything that is of value. Okay. So, if, for example, these laws were restored for state republics as they are now, then you would expect to see things like the Immigration Act of 1965 be taken off as being unconstitutional. You would expect things like all of those laws that go against state laws. For example, in 2003, they supposedly struck down from their opinion that it shouldn't be a felony crime for one man to have sodomy with another man, or even a man and a woman to have sodomy. It was a felony. Even if you just knew about it, you were expected to do a citizen's arrest. Okay? And, calling all these forms of pedophilia now, they call it safety training, where they go naked or half naked to teach the children in the schools that it's fun to castrate or do chemical castration of children, okay? And tell them they have a right to. They could just become another gender on will at any moment. And these kinds of things, which is also worse than pedophilia itself, okay? And they take them to teach them sex dances and to go into clubs and so on and so forth. And they don't call it pedophilia anymore. They call it safety training. They have more than 100 such safety training pride events, they call it, in San Francisco. And they say that will reduce suicides by sending now more drag queens to schools 4 times a year in some places, and more than that, where they go there and teach the children sex dances and to rub against the teachers and so on and so forth. This is all documented. There's videos of it going around all over the place the last few years. Teaching the boys to dress up in women's lingerie and so on and so forth. And they say that will reduce the suicides by promoting it in the school. And that even without parents knowing, they can chemically castrate the children. Okay. And that's no longer called a crime of dismembering someone. It's no longer called pedophilia. Okay. Because normally, if you had any knowledge of pedophilia, or even if two people were conspiring to commit pedophilia in the future, you had an obligation to do a citizen's arrest. Now, somehow, an opinion that had just one of the words of right and one of the words with homosexuality in one of the decisions somewhere on the Supreme Court. Now they can just take it to say, no, that means, and then, weaponize it. That's what a foreign tyrant dictatorship can do, especially when it's owned by the Federal Reserve Bank, which is owned by foreign shareholders. Okay, and that now it's weaponized by foreign power over local state laws. Okay. Interracial marriage, for example, was felony in 48 states. Well, no, actually, 28 states remained a felony in the year 1968. The other states had lower laws in 1968. It wasn't always a felony, but 28 of the states continue to have it a felony crime. That meant normally about 10 years in prison, where the man, the woman, the pastor, or whoever was conspiring to commit that felony would all go to prison upwards of 10 years. Somehow in the Supreme Court case that went many years later up to the Supreme Court in Loving versus Virginia, this woman just wanted her husband to be set free from prison. She didn't want all of this government of the whole United States to now be forced to undo state law of the felony crime of interracial marriage. This wasn't the aim, but somehow one or two words in there, and they used it to go out to every state. And, under fear of the way they did the integration of the schools with bayonets and killing parents, the states just bowed down, which, again, they're not following their mandates of what they are and representative of the people, and the states did not stand together against the crimes against their state sovereignties. It had nothing to do, they like to go in and say there's some sort of ethnic suppression. Well, what about the suppression of whites to have their own laws? And did the blacks really want white law? Did they really want to go into European law? I thought they wanted self-representation, which meant that they could have their own black government. Most of them love that idea. And have treaties with us, that's fine, and trade with us. They love that idea. Almost every one of them, the Black Lives Matter, they don't want white rule. If you check, they're having every day a new school activity or some sort of activity or event where whites are not allowed to attend, they say. They don't want any of our system. And you want to say, oh, but there was no Christian system before, then you're lying. If there was no whiteness or systemic white supremacy, whatever you want to call it, then you're also double lying because, there was systemic white supremacy, or at least some white touch somewhere in the system, right? So they don't want to be in that. None of them do. They want their own system. And let them have it, let's bless them with it. Let's give it to them, Let them have their self-representation. They don't want white cops policing them. Give them the black cops that they want, Give them their own laws to restore order in their own areas the way they see fit. Give them the true sovereignty, which means we're not going to intervene on any way they govern their own local laws. Okay? So may God be praised for the Christian nationalistic laws of our American forefathers. I pray they all get restored, all of the laws that our Christian forefathers set out. and the illegal central usurpation, and the tyrannical mandates via vague Supreme Court opinions, taking one word out of context and putting it into their tyrannical executive order or other federal false and fraudulent bills that go against the Constitution, repugnant to the Constitution, that they use as a precedent to steamroll over other local laws, which they're only set up to protect. So praise God that there is a way, and some will have to hold out if they're just going to hold to their oath to protect and defend the Constitution. It doesn't say protect and defend the state. It says protect and defend the Constitution, which means you protect the rule of law, not you're going to protect all these other things that they want to put in there. Okay, protect crimes. It doesn't say protect that. So, if you check, part of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights, which means freedom of association. And freedom of association includes freedom to disassociate for any criteria. And it's enshrined as a human right around the whole world, the freedom of association. So praise be to God that at some stage we're going to at least be able to live in peace and keep God's nationalistic commandments, which 90% of God's law is national. And we all have to repent all the time of any violations of His laws. And we're going to pray appropriately now. And I pray everybody will occupy till He comes, at least in your own beliefs, your own community, your own area, to pray right and do right as you can, step by step, to simply obey God's commandments, which include every single sin, which is for a national level applicability, to be free in your own community, to have freedom to keep His commandments in peace. Thanks be to God for that true way of prayer He's given us all. Now, I pray that we'll make it till when His Zion government comes. And yes, the Christian nations are the Zion of God. You can also read up on that in the description. There's a link for you. I hope you enjoy it, and we look forward to all the victories He's given for His people. His coming kingdom will not be stopped. The light will always overcome the darkness. The reality of the darkness being destroyed is all there is. No matter which angle the darkness thinks that it can stand, the gates of hell don't prevail against the saints. As far as I read, the darkness cannot overcome any light. You turn on the light, darkness is gone. That's all. So we're looking forward as we just continue to speak the truth. That's it. By the blood of the Lamb, the blood of Jesus Christ, it says, and by the word of our testimony, we overcome the devil. That's what it says happens. And I believe it. So let's go forward in victory. Take care and God bless you. Bye-bye.